Mr. Roncarelli would go to the courthouse, and they'd give him a blank pad of these things, and he'd put his signature on all of them. And then whenever one of Jehovah's Witnesses came in, they'd just tear it off and write the person's name on it, and they could go out.
Back on the street, some Jehovah's Witnesses are often rearrested the same day. Léonce Plante is one of the many judges who is tired of the parade.
One time, he was annoyed when Jehovah's Witnesses were in front of him. He says, "Why, you're a bunch of crazy nuts." This was the language that he used off the bench. So this got a lot of press across the country, too.
Il y avait à ce moment-là au-delà de 800 causes pendantes. Et là, on voulait informer le public. On voulait dire aux gens, la haine ardente, ce sont l'action, de la façon que les juges nous traitaient, la façon que les policiers nous traitaient.
A 4-page pamphlet entitled La haine ardente du Québec, or Quebec's Burning Hate, hits the streets in early November 1946. The force behind Quebec's suicidal hate is priest domination. Thousands of Quebec Catholics are so blinded by the priests that they serve God's cause in mobbing Jehovah's Witnesses.
Les gens, le commun peuple en général, ne le savaient pas ce qui se passait. Alors là, on a distribué ce pamphlet-là dans le but d'informer les gens.
C'était une insulte épouvantable à l'époque. Aujourd'hui, on peut comprendre qu'on critique la religion ou des choses du genre, mais à l'époque, c'était pratiquement, écoutez, des gens de l'extérieur qui pensaient qu'eux avaient raison sur les catholiques et les protestants dans leur façon de croire et de professer leur religion. Alors imaginez, c'est le diable dans la bergerie ou dans l'église, ni plus ni moins à l'époque.
The Watchtower Society, the Jehovah's Witness headquarters near Toronto, prints 1 million copies in English, 500,000 in French. It sparks an explosive reaction from Duplessis. He declares a war without mercy against Jehovah's Witnesses. Because this pamphlet is seditious, I have instructed the Assistant Attorney General to employ every means necessary to find the guilty parties and put an end to their unbearable actions. Across Quebec, police seize and destroy thousands of burning hate pamphlets. They find a shipment in a house in Sherbrooke owned by Frank Roncarelli. They zero in on the man they believe is a ringleader. Authorities hatch a plan to punish Roncarelli, to strike where he's most vulnerable, his restaurant liquor license. Quebec Liquor Commission manager Edouard Archambault consults his boss, Maurice Duplessis.
C'est Archambault qui lui aurait donné l'idée d'enlever le permis de boissons alcooliques du restaurant de Roncarelli. D'autre part, Duplessis, quand il a décidé que c'était une bonne idée, c'est lui qui a donné l'ordre à Archambault de le faire.
On December 4th, 1946, liquor inspectors show up at Roncarelli's restaurant. They cancel his license and cart away almost $3,000 worth of wine, beer, and spirits.
It wasn't right. He was always upset because they'd confiscated several $1,000s worth of liquor, and he was supposed to get paid back for it. He never got the money. I remember that always saying, that really bugged him, was they'd taken all this good wine he'd imported and everything else, and they never remunerated him for it, which they were supposed to.
But Duplessis says Roncarelli is reaping the consequences of his own actions. The communists, the Nazis, as well as those who are the propagandists for the Witnesses of Jehovah have been treated as they deserved. The restaurant isn't Roncarelli's only business venture, but the raid triggers a financial freefall.
The major international mortgage companies canceled their mortgages. They withdrew their money. Friends he'd gone to school with, presidents of corporations, because he went to Lord Canada College in McGill before he went back to Italy. They were afraid. They gave him support. Frank, we're behind you. We're all behind you. Just don't stop and talk to me on the street where people can see me. And it was that kind of atmosphere that du Plessis had engendered, you know, because of his power.
Du Plessis thinks he's delivered a mortal wound, but Roncarelli will give the Premier the fight of his life. The war without mercy escalates through December of 1946. It causes outrage in the English press across Canada. The Globe and Mail, December 19th, 1946. This is a monstrous outrage on civil liberties. The Inquisition put heretics to death, while Quebec only puts them in jail. No place is safe for witnesses in Quebec. In the heart of the Beauce region, one family is about to feel du Plessis' wrath.
Aimé Boucher was a little French farmer. He lived right down in the heart of Catholic Quebec. And he was the only Jehovah's Witness for 60 miles around. And he had distributed some of the burning hate pamphlets.
Two of his daughters, Lucille and Giselle, are the first to feel the heat.
Mes sœurs, il avait été présenté le journal, là, La haine en dedans du Québec. C'était à peu près 10 000 où ce que c'est qu'on restait qui avait été. Puis ils ont été arrêtés par la police, puis on ne savait pas, nous autres, mes parents ne savaient pas. Ils les ont pris, ils les ont emmenés en prison. Puis c'est le lendemain qu'on a su qu'il avait été arrêté.
On December 11th, Aimé Boucher is on his way to the courthouse to bail out his daughters. He only gets as far as the train station.
Puis, je me rappelle, il y a deux polices en civil qui sont arrivés. Puis, ils ont dit à mon père de suivre. Ça fait que là, il savait qu'il était arrêté. Ça fait qu'avant de partir là, de la gare, il est venu nous dire salut. Puis, il l'a emmené en prison comme ça.
For Thérèse Boucher's sisters, the charges are dropped. Her father is still in jail.
Je me rappelle qu'on avait été le visiter, oui. Il était en prison, puis il était en train de lire sa Bible. C'est ça que j'ai remarqué. Il était de bonne humeur, ça. Puis il lisait sa Bible.
Aimé Boucher is facing serious charges. Du Plessis has raised the stakes in his war against Jehovah's Witnesses.
When du Plessis then decided to get heavy-handed and lay these seditious libel charges, he shot himself in the foot because now he had the kind of charges that were appealable to the Supreme Court of Canada. And so once we could get them out of Quebec, then we could get justice.
Aimé Boucher prepares for a fight that will take him to the Supreme Court. By mid-December, there are 1,000 cases before Quebec courts. John Howe is ensnared in Quebec City.
I was going door to door, offering free home Bible studies to anybody who was interested. And this boy, whose father was engaged in that, in l'Action Catholique, he came out and he started to fight with me. And his mother came out with a broom. And then he picked up my briefcase and he ran to the police station. And I chased him down to the police station. And he laid a charge against me. I laid a charge against him. We never heard about the charge against him. But I was brought up before Mercier.
Judge Jean Mercier says if he could, he would put Jehovah's Witnesses away for life. John Howe gets 3 months in jail.
They put me in a cell block with 12 other men. One was accused, it was a taxi driver, he was accused of rape. Another was a hotel keeper, he was accused of having cut his wife's throat. One was a priest who was in there for black marketeering.
In his New Year's address, du Plessis promises to keep up the pressure on the most hated group in the province. Zealots of a subversive philosophy have launched repeated and virulent attacks against the traditions of our province, attacking Quebec because they know and sense that Quebec is the protector of Christian civilization in Canada and even the entire American continent. These people follow an untrue path.
Lorsque l'exemple vient d'en haut, lorsque le premier ministre de la province de Québec dit on peut frapper un témoin de Jéhovah, de toucher dans son gagne-pain, même si la raison n'a rien à voir avec la vente de boissons alcooliques, ça donne le signal à toute une population que tout est permis contre ces gens-là.
In Montreal, Frank Roncarelli's restaurant is in trouble.
It's Montreal. People go out for a 2-hour lunch. They want a bottle of wine. You know, if they couldn't get it, they'd go elsewhere for lunch or for dinner. So the business sort of slowly petered out. He got his staff placed, got everybody in jobs, and made sure everybody was looked after. And 3-4 months later, he closed it down.
Forced to sell his restaurant at a loss, Roncarelli instructs his lawyer, Frank Scott, to sue Quebec Liquor Commissioner Edouard Archambault.
He tried to sue the government and couldn't because Duplessis was Attorney General and wouldn't allow him to sue the Liquor Control Board, who he tried to sue. And then whether it was Frank Scott or whoever got the idea that we sue Mr. Duplessis personally, or the Premier, as Mr. Duplessis for using his position as Premier and Attorney General to foster his own personal religious beliefs. And that is a big no-no under the British North America Act.
In June of 1947, Roncarelli sues the most powerful man in Quebec for $90,000.
Maurice Duplessis, lorsqu'il a pris la décision qui a accepté qu'on suspende le permis ou qu'on retire le permis à Frank Roncarelli, ne se doutait pas que Frank Roncarelli irait en cours. Pour la simple et bonne raison que ça se faisait couramment d'enlever des permis de boissons à des restaurateurs ou à des gens qui avaient des clubs où il y avait de la boisson. Et je pense qu'il a été lui-même surpris. C'est un cas unique dans l'histoire où un restaurateur a contesté le pouvoir politique.
Je ne sais pas si M. Roncarelli savait dans quoi il se lançait en termes de longueur du processus judiciaire lorsqu'il a intenté des poursuites contre M. Duplessis à la fin des années 1940. Mais de toute façon, il avait perdu son restaurant pour de bon. Et donc, c'est une question d'honneur davantage qu'une question d'argent.
Roncarelli's duel with Duplessis is also destined for the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, his fortunes are plummeting.
He tried various things, couldn't do business in Quebec, in Canada. In Canada, he couldn't do business, not just in Quebec. So he moved to the States and tried to do some projects there.
In Quebec City, Maurice Duplessis amends legislation to increase the penalty for distributing pamphlets without a permit to $1,000 or 3 months in jail. Laurier Saumur ignores the law. He's arrested 103 times. Sillery Prison is becoming Saumur's second home.
Celui qui barrait l'époque, il venait presque à tous les jours s'asseoir dans ma chambre, puis il me posait toutes sortes de questions, parce qu'il se demandait, que c'était impossible, il se demandait, il dit, vous ne devriez pas être ici, à la prison. Il constatait qu'on était enfreint de la liberté, puis il voyait l'injustice qu'il se manifestait par les dirigeants, et en particulier Duplessis, évidemment, et les chefs religieux qui poussaient même les juges à essayer de mettre fin à nos activités.
Saumur decides to counter the harassment. He targets a Quebec City bylaw that authorizes the chief of police to censor contents of any pamphlet. Saumur's case will become the third Supreme Court challenge to Duplessis' war without mercy against Jehovah's Witnesses.